up!
Absolutely.
This is part of the World March for Peace and Nonviolence, which is a march for thousands, almost 1 million people who are around the world. We're calling out for the end of nukes, the end of war, and the end of violence. Let's make lots of noise the whole time to try to give a sign to people around us that it's time to wake up. Ready?
My name is Roberto Verdecchia, and I'm the Canadian coordinator for the World March for Peace and Nonviolence. Why do I do what I do? Because I certainly don't get paid for it. And no, I do what I do because it's meaningful, because I've always, for the longest time, ever since I was a teenager, I think I was very concerned about my future and the future of the planet environmentally and the future of nuclear weapons. But in general, I've always felt like it was a meaningful thing to do, that nothing else made a whole lot of sense. It didn't make a lot of sense for me to think only about myself in a society that seemed crazy to me, in a world that seemed to be going madder and madder, that had these kinds of crises. So I do it because, almost because I'm compelled to do it. It's almost like I didn't even choose. It just felt like, I gotta do something. And I think that feeling, a lot of people have that feeling.
My name is Matthew Albrecht, and I'm one of the World March Canada coordinators. The World March started as a project of the Humanist Movement, and I'm a member of the Humanist Movement, and I've been active in the Waterloo region with the Nonviolence Festival. So when the proposal for the World March for Peace and Nonviolence came up, we were all over it, of course.
The World March is a worldwide activity. It was started by an international organization called World Without Wars, and the list of things going on is sort of too vast to relay. So, I mean, I guess there's two things. One is that there's an actual team of people who are marching around the world, traveling around, doing this kind of symbolic journey. And they left New Zealand on the 2nd of October, and they went through Asia and through Russia and through Europe, and now they're into Africa. And so wherever they show up, there's different events to celebrate the arrival of that team. So that's kind of a central spine, let's say, of the march. But outside of that, anybody can do anything they want. So while the marchers have been going through Africa, we just did our pajama walk yesterday, also to draw attention to the march.
The point of the pajama walk was to invite people to wake up, more or less. We walked down Yonge Street wearing pajamas, and we had alarm clocks, and we were saying, please, wake up. Our future is very jeopardized by the violence in the world, so let's wake up to this important cause.
It's as if we're sleepwalking. We're walking around with these nuclear warheads pointed at us. So wear pajamas, bang pots and pans to kind of, hey, everybody wake up. There's a serious issue that needs to be addressed, and we have to do something.
With the end of the Cold War, we think there are no more nuclear bombs around, but apparently there are something like 23,000 nuclear warheads on our planet. That's 23,000 too many.
The issue of nuclear weapons and the existence of nuclear weapons is in fact the most critical issue facing humanity right now. I mean, a lot of people talk about climate change, and that's also very dangerous. But all the effort that's put into climate change and putting into environmental awareness, all that effort that's been put there, all that could be wiped out in minutes if there was a nuclear war.
The World March for Peace and Nonviolence is about raising awareness about violence and its many forms. Nonviolence is like a direction. It's a quality of relationships. It's seeing the other person not as an object, not about what I can get from it, but seeing the other person as a human being, recognizing their humanity, not treating the other person like an object.
So most people tend to think of violence only as physical, and that's the most obvious and gross kind. But nonviolence, at least our approach, looks at the different kinds of violence and tries to raise awareness of the different kinds of violence, which are not only physical but economic, so poverty and exploitation, also sexual violence, racial violence, religious violence, psychological violence, those different kinds of violence. And if you begin to see that, begin to understand that, you realize that physical violence is almost the last kind of violence that appears on the radar. It's like almost after all the other violences have been exercised, people then maybe lash out and become physically violent. Personally, it means to try to, I think very simply, in a nutshell, it means to try to treat others as you want to be treated, which everyone has said before, but it's not easy to do. And it means to reject violence in all its forms, to try to act out.
I have a lot of hope these days about where we can go as a planet. It's very easy to talk about these aspirations that seem so lofty about a world full of peace and nonviolence. But the only way to move towards that is by understanding the past, the violence of the past, and being able to comprehend it in such a way that we can then move forward.
Wake up! Time for peace! Wake up!
And it's possible, and it's the evolutionary step. It's the way we need to go. We're only here for a limited time. We didn't really choose the conditions we're born into, but as human beings, different than the trees or the squirrels or the rocks, we have the ability to change the conditions that we find ourselves in. So I ask myself, what kind of conditions do I want to live in? And very quickly I see that there's just way too much violence in my heart and in the world around me. And so it made sense. The best thing that I could do is work for peace and nonviolence. And I can do that through this World March for Peace and Nonviolence, or in any way I can, because it's the most important thing, I think.
I think everybody should believe in this cause because it's a cause for humanity. It's not a cause of one particular faction over another. We're saying, look, humanity, there are these weapons out there, nuclear weapons, that could kill us all, regardless of what you think. Regardless of if you're my friend or if you agree with me or not, you're going to go too. So I think there isn't a lot of room for people to disagree. There shouldn't be. It's a common, I mean, at stake is our common future. So it's kind of like all the other things that we disagree on usually. Great, let's continue to disagree about them and fight over them or discuss, no? But if we allow this situation to continue and it continues out of control, there's not going to be any future for us to disagree on.
All right.
Oh, we are saved.